Language, language, language. What do you know about language? How the language contribute to us as a human being? Let's go deeper about that as I, Rena Monil, will introduce you to the language and linguistics. Our advisor, our subject teacher, give us 3 questions about the introduction of language and linguistics. And now I am going to share what are my thoughts and knowledge about it. So the first question is how language contributes to human leverage compared to other species. So looking into this matter of distinct perspective, I can really say that language is universal and our primary tool in communicating. We humans are the most advantageous in using it since language facilitated our capacity for self-awareness and abstract thought, wherein we can share or transfer information to another. We can explain our thoughts and ideas. We can discuss some situations and alternative actions. In this, it proves that our ability as an individual, which is to communicate using language, was probably the single most advantageous evolutionary adaptation of the human species. So the second question is, differentiate the different properties of language from one another. So the following are modularity, consistency and recursion, discreteness, productivity, arbitrariness, reliance on context, and variability. But let's first tackle about modularity. So from the word module, it is a sequence or a different level of analysis and discipline. Most linguistics believe that language is a modular system. It produces and interprets language using a set of component subsystems in a coordinated way. It means that in order to achieve full potential of analysis, these subsystems must be coordinated. So what is subsystems? Example of these are phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, lexicon, semantics, and discourse. These are the subsystems that produce modularity. Next is constituency and recursion. So what do you mean by constituency? So it is mean that language has constituents like the constituents of verb, or in a sentence we have the noun phrase and a verb phrase. So in constituency, all languages are organized into constituents, allowing more complex units to enter structures where simpler are also possible. So we can say in English, he went to market, or the handsome man went to market. Constituents can be replaced by other constituents, but we can't replace a constituent with a series of words that is not a constituent. Being compared of constituents also allows languages to be recursive. So we mean recursion language is infinite. You can add and add and add as long as you'll never go out of topic. The recursiveness of language has profound implications. It means that no one can learn a language by memorizing all the sentences of that language. Our brain is finite. But recursiveness means that we are just producing and understanding an infinite number of sentences. Next is discreteness. So what do you mean by discreteness? It is unique. The language is distinct. And every individual, like we Filipinos, we use the same language. We here in Cebu are using the Cebuano Visayan language. But even if we are in the same island, even if we are in the same geographical area, there are still no assurance that we are using or we are producing the same sound. Each of us has a discrete or a distinct way of producing sound. That's what discreteness is. Next is productivity. If the novel word is formed according to the monophological and phonological rules of its language and it is understandable in context, it is a bona fide word, even if it's not found in a dictionary. It does not mean that it is not yet found in dictionary. It is not a valid word. As long as it is understood in a certain community, then that is a word. That is the meaning of productivity. Every day, people in a certain society can coin a new word. Just like in our quarantine season, there are a lot of coin words like enhanced community quarantine. Another is new normal. And even COVID itself is a new coin language. So that's how productivity language is. Next is arbitrariness. With few exceptions, words have no principled or systematic connection with what they mean. So example of this is like in Manila, langga means ant. And here in Cebu, langga means bird. Even onomatopoetic words for sounds like ding-dong and click that are supposed to sound like the noise they make actually vary from language to language. Next is reliance on context. So the same sequence of sounds can represent different concepts in the same language. How are you able to figure out which meaning I intend when I say one? The answer, which is as complex as it is obvious, is that you rely on its context. If I say one before a noun, as in one dog, your knowledge of English grammar will lead you to guess that I mean one. On the other hand, if I say one after a noun or pronoun, as in Mary won, that same knowledge will lead you to guess that I mean the past tense of win. And lastly is the variability. The language that people use varies depending on who's speaking and the situation in which they're speaking. Speakers vary the language they use to signal their social identities like geographical, social, status, ethnicity, and even gender, and also to define the immediate speech situation. So the last question is, what does this line mean? Language varieties differ because over time they have adapted to the differing needs of their speech communities. Each language does things differently. The dominant group perceived to have higher status and the less powerful groups are stigmatized as incorrect or bad. Do you agree or disagree about the statement? So evidently, I disagree on the dominant group perceived to have higher status and the less powerful groups are stigmatized as incorrect or bad, because in this statement, we find the fact that language is a universal characteristic, which means that all language and all language varieties are equal and justifying. One sequence of these kinds of language attitudes in which our language variety is considered better than others. It is the corollary belief that speakers of incorrect varieties are somehow inferior. One sequence of these kinds of language attitudes in which our language variety is considered better than others. It is the corollary belief that speakers of incorrect varieties are somehow inferior because they will not or cannot speak correctly. Their incorrect language is then used to justify further discrimination in education and in employment. And that is the big stratification. We can really notice that the world depends in large part on the statuses one occupies. Thus, we are likely to be fairly unaware of the statuses we occupy that privilege us and provide advantage, and are acutely aware of those who yield negative judgments and unfair treatment. Majority status is unmarked or unstigmatized and grants a sense of entitlement. The unmarked category, it really tells us that a society takes for granted. That's why I disagree on that line. So that's all. Thank you for listening, everyone, and I hope you gained something. I also hope that you get my point, and that's all. Thank you.